Hello, Miss G here. Today we're going to be reading Lyle Finds His Mother by Bernard Weber. The dedication to my godson, Joshua. The world was changing, but if changes were taking place, Lyle the crocodile scarcely noticed. It was still the same wonderful world he loved. Lyle's world was Bird and Loretta, his favorite neighbor. It was children playing with children until dark. Most of all, Lyle's world was the house on East 88th Street with happy days and nights spent close to the family he loved, the Prims. But if Lyle was happy with his world, there was someone living across town who did not share his pleasure. That someone was Hector P. Valenti, star of stage and screen. Sadly, Signor Valenti had fallen upon dark and hungry days. His cupboard was bare. There was not a crumb in sight. Even the mice, who for so long had shared his humble life, packed up and moved one morning. Because he could not bear the sight of its emptiness, Hector stored his hat in the refrigerator. His hat and a lonely jar of mustard. One day he was so overcome with hunger, Hector began to imagine how delicious indeed his hat might taste, cooked to tenderness and seasoned lightly with mustard. To keep his mind off his troubles, Hector took to the streets, only to be reminded again and again of his empty stomach. Even the pigeons in the park were enjoying excellent food, magnificent health, and outrageous cheer. Oh, to be a pigeon, sighed Hector, and never know a day of want. It was in the park that Hector came upon Lyle and the Prims. The sight of Lyle brought instant memories of happy days gone by, days when they were a team, performing on stages the world over. He wanted to rush up to Lyle, throw his arms around his old friend, but shame for his ragged appearance held him back. Lyle was everywhere in the park that day, riding round and round on the carousel, dancing about with a huge red balloon, and sailing a toy boat with Joshua. Wherever Lyle went, Hector followed at a safe distance, enjoying every minute. When at last the Prims decided it was time to leave the park, Lyle waved goodbye to everyone. If only I could perform on stage with Lyle again, thought Hector. My days of need would be gone forever. But what reason could possibly make Lyle ever want to leave the Prims? On his way home, Hector came upon a sign. It read, "Remember Mother on Mother's Day." In a wink, he thought of a scheme to lure Lyle away from the Prims. But I can't do it, thought Hector, not to Lyle. No, I would rather starve. Suddenly, a fresh and ferocious wave of hunger swept over him. I'll do it, he decided. The next day, a letter for Lyle arrived at the house on East 88th Street. "Dear Lyle," read Mrs. Prim, "how would you like to meet your dear sweet mother? If this small matter is of interest to you, come immediately to the address listed on the back of this letter." And it was signed, "Cordially, Hector P. Valenti, star of stage and screen." "P.S.," Hector added, "Come alone." P.P.S., "Bring along a snack." "Come immediately indeed," snapped Mrs. Prim. "Hector's up to tricks again, and what a wretched trick." "I don't want Lyle to leave," cried Joshua. Lyle will stay right here where he belongs, said Mr. Prim, and we'll not give this letter another thought. But Lyle gave it a thought. He gave it lots of thought. In fact, he was astounded he had never thought about it before. I didn't know I had a mother, he whispered to himself, but I must have had a mother. I'm here, aren't I? What proves I had a mother? It wasn't long before Lyle found himself trying to picture his mother. She was sort of small, he decided, and she was very kind, like Mrs. Prim. And she was pretty, too, like Mrs. Prim. In fact, the more he pictured her, the more remarkably his mother looked like Mrs. Prim. He began to imagine the sound of his mother's voice. It was sweet, like Mrs. Prim's. He was little Lyle again, and his mother would always be saying things like, "Are you hungry, Lyle? Here, have a graham cracker, dear. Have two, as a matter of fact. They are so delicious." But she would be strict, his mother. "Do wear a hat," she'd say, "and be sure to bundle up and don't dawdle. And be careful crossing streets. And remember not to talk to strangers. And behave in school now. Here, Lyle?" "My, aren't you clever?" she would exclaim as Lyle somersaulted, did handwalks, and showed off all of his tricks for his mother. It wasn't long before Lyle was deep into longing for his mother. The Prims guessed what was going through Lyle's mind, and they desperately tried to distract him. Mrs. Prim, who was very active in politics, took Lyle along with her to campaign headquarters, where he was kept busy folding and stuffing letters into envelopes. Elect Gladys Slater to Congress. Take care who governs you. Vote. Vote. Mr. Prim introduced Lyle to the pleasures of indoor gardening. Joshua received permission from his teacher to bring Lyle for a visit to school. "This is Lyle. He lives at our house. He's my best friend," Joshua announced to the class. "He's our friend, too," many of the children called out. Here's the lesson on the board. And, hand, sand, band. Run, running. Swim, swimming. Hop, hopping. The teacher assigned Lyle a seat up front where everyone could see him. "Now let's all show Lyle what we're learning in school today," he said. Later that morning, Lyle was given paper and colored pencils. This is his drawing. At lunch, everyone wanted to sit near Lyle. Teachers came over to introduce themselves. "Oh, Lyle," said one teacher, "I've heard so much about you, and I'm delighted to meet you at last. Won't you please come visit my class too?" Lyle shook his head eagerly and was so happy to be asked back again. Although he was just a bit sleepy during math, Lyle had a marvelous visit at school. It seemed finally he had managed to forget all about Hector and his letter. But he was reminded again several days later when he happened to see a mother lovingly hand her child a graham cracker. And now not even Loretta could coax a smile from Lyle. Nor could Bird. Nor could the Prims, though they tried desperately. In the end, and with deep sorrow in their hearts, they made the difficult decision. They gave Lyle their blessings to go off in search of his mother. On the morning he was to leave, the Prims packed a gift basket for Lyle to take to his mother, if in fact he did find her. They packed Turkish caviar, alfalfa dumplings, dandelion greens, yogurt biscuits, rose-petal jelly, brandied peaches, and after-dinner mints. As a special gift, Mrs. Prim enclosed a locket containing Lyle's picture. The Prims then took Lyle to Hector's address, where they cried their farewells. Alone now, Lyle climbed the 6 flights of stairs to Hector's world. "Lyle, how happy I am to see you," Hector greeted him. "And you brought a gift." Lyle was hardly through the doorway when Hector swooped down upon the gift basket and began to devour its contents. "This is delicious," he exclaimed between mouthfuls of dumplings. "I must borrow the recipe." Lyle showed Hector the letter about his mother. "Ah, yes," sighed Hector. "But it's such a distance, you know, to your mother. Traveling will be costly, I fear. However, I have a wonderful plan. We can earn our way by performing together again, if you know what I mean." Lyle knew exactly what Hector meant. Once again, Lyle was on stage with Hector, and magically, once again, the sound of applause rang joyously in Hector's ears. Now Hector was dressing expensively, eating handsomely, and counting his money lovingly. Every night, Hector counted his money, and every night Lyle showed him the letter. "Ah, that again," Hector would say, paying it scant attention. One night, Lyle refused to go on stage. Hector pleaded, the stagehands shoved, and the theater manager cried. "Very well," said Hector, "I will take you to your mother, but you must perform tonight." Lyle smiled as he moved out onto the stage. At last, they began the long journey to find Lyle's mother. They traveled for days, by plane, by train, and by boat, until they reached the land of the crocodile. Lyle looked and looked. There wasn't a crocodile in sight, not even a ripple on the water. "How do you like that?" said Hector. "All the way from East 88th Street, and she's not home. Well, perhaps she's out for the day. You know how it is, Lyle. She probably keeps herself busy. No doubt she has things to do and places to go. We'll just come back another time. Maybe we'll telephone first. How's that?" Lyle stared at him. "I don't suppose we can telephone, can we?" said Hector. "All right," said Hector. "If it'll make you happy, I'll call out to her. Lyle's mother! Lyle's mother!" Hector's sing-song voice rang out across the water. "You have a visitor. Your son Lyle is here. Son Lyle is here. Mother dear." Suddenly, to their astonishment, the surface of the water broke and the head of a crocodile appeared and disappeared. "Did you see her? Did you see her?" Hector cried out. "Same nose, same mouth, same expression around the eyes. Lyle, that was your mother. You saw your mother. Isn't it wonderful? Isn't it marvelous? Didn't she look lovely? Well, now we can go. We had a nice little visit and we could go. Goodbye, mother dear," Hector called out. Lyle looked at him with growing suspicion. "Well, she could have been your mother," said Hector. "Who's to say she wasn't your mother? Prove it that she wasn't your mother. She just didn't recognize you. Can't blame her for that, can you? I mean, well, what'd you expect from a stupid crocodile?" he blurted out. Hector wanted to take back his words immediately. "Lyle, I am sorry. I am really and truly sorry. It slipped what I said about crocodiles. I mean, I think highly of crocodiles. I adore crocodiles. Crocodiles are among my dearest friends. Oh, Lyle, I wouldn't ever want to say anything to hurt you. Not me, not Hector. I would pull out my tongue first. But before Hector had a chance to pull out his tongue, the water began to churn, and the head of a crocodile popped up once more. Lyle raced toward the river. "Don't! You mustn't! It's dangerous!" Hector cried out as Lyle plunged into the water. Hector shut his eyes. He opened them slowly. To his surprise, both crocodiles were at the opposite side of the river, and what's more, they appeared genuinely delighted to see each other. After a while, the two went swimming together. They spent the entire afternoon together, swimming, diving, and splashing about. Hector grew so tired waiting for Lyle to return, he fell asleep. When he awakened, Lyle was standing over him. "Is she?" said Hector. "Is she really your mother?" Lyle motioned toward the water. Out came the other crocodile, smiling gloriously as she suddenly began to perform all manner of fancy somersaults, handsprings, twirls, and leaps. Hector looked on in amazement. "It's your mother, all right," said Hector. Several days later, the doorbell rang at the house on East 88th Street. Surprise, surprise! There stood Lyle, Hector, and a very special guest, Lyle's mother. Birds squawked, Loretta rushed in excitedly, and everyone shouted for joy. "Oh, Lyle," cried Mrs. Prim, "we missed you so much, and you found your mother." "Hello, Mother," said Mrs. Prim. That night they had a dinner party to celebrate. Lyle's mother wore her lovely locket and proudly showed Lyle's picture to everyone. "If ever you should be seeking a career on stage," Hector whispered to her, "well, perhaps I could be helpful." As for Lyle, his world was complete now. He was back with the Prims, and he had found his mother. She wasn't quite as he had pictured her, but then a mother is still a mother. The end. Have a nice day now.